Hello and welcome back to the Dharma Business Codes podcast. I'm Fabi, your host, and today we're going to have one of my favorite people, IRL in Nashville, Taylor Nick. We met a few years ago, and it feels like in lifetimes as well. But in this specific lifetime, we've met, and Taylor is a powerhouse, fellow managing, so doing all the things. Taylor, how about you introduce yourself? Thank you for being here.
Oh my goodness, I'm so happy to be here. I love talking to you. I could talk to you for hours. Every time we do talk, we're like, we probably need like 3 more days to finish this conversation. So I'm glad that we finally have a chance to sit down and dive deep on so many of our favorite topics.
Yes, yes, yes.
Business and spirituality are 2 of my favorite things, and they fuse naturally together. At least to me, they do. And so I love to talk about that because I guess in some instances they could be considered very separate spheres, but they absolutely don't have to be, and probably ultimately shouldn't be. But yes, my name is Taylor. I was a hair and makeup artist here in Nashville for 15 years. I did celebrities on the CMA red carpet, photo shoots, music videos. I've had a couple of my own salons. I've worked in high-end salons for years. And maybe, when was it? 2015 or so, I was getting a little disenchanted with the beauty industry. I was wondering if we were telling people that they were broken and needed fixing, or if we were helping them express some part of their inner self so they could show up in the world in a more authentic way. And probably it's a combination, but you can never get to the inside to resolve the things there by changing enough things on your outside. There's never enough things you can change. And so I became really obsessed with this idea of inner beauty. What is inner beauty? What is it about the most beautiful people that I have met that feels like they're lit from within? They feel magnetic. They feel glowy. I feel drawn to them. That was kind of how I defined inner beauty. And I went on this pilgrimage of interviewing every single person I knew and actually recorded it in a podcast, asking them, what do you find beautiful? Who are the most beautiful people you've met? What did they have in common? When do you feel the most beautiful, and how is that different than when you feel loved or even just pretty? What's the difference? And I kind of came to the conclusion through that process of recording 3 seasons of that podcast and hearing all of these similar threads and patterns. If we're going to talk about light that comes from the inside, we probably need to learn more about what's happening on the inside. And so that led me to study all these ancient philosophies and spiritual systems and things to discern what that light is. And I concluded for myself, I believe that's the light of the soul, that the soul is just pure light, and beauty is actually more of a subtractive technique than an additive. It's more about taking things away that are blocking the inner light than by adding more and more things to the outside. And so then I started learning about all of these different techniques that help unblock the inner light. So I studied the Enneagram was kind of my first gateway drug into systems. One of my close friends says that we are systems enthusiasts. We love a system. Love a system. I know you love a system. And so Enneagram, and then human design and astrology as well. I mean, I have different ways that I describe each of these systems for understanding the framework of who you are, who your soul came here to be, what your gifts are, and how to express that in the world and reveal that light. But my biggest thing that changed the whole trajectory for me was this woman I follow named Bella Lively, who does sessions called Inner Voice Facilitation. And I was listening to her. She would just post on her podcast these live sessions that she would do with people. And when I would hear her asking their inner voice questions, and when their inner voice would respond, my entire frequency of my body would change. It felt expansive and peaceful. And I knew everything that was said had a resonance of truth to it. It was like all of these different people's inner voices were saying very similar things. And so when she gave the opportunity to become an inner voice facilitator, I signed up immediately. She didn't even have a date set yet. I paid the course thing and That practice, the language that she put around it, has been the most transformative thing for me. Even though I realize now, growing up in a Christian tradition, I've been doing inner voice facilitation my whole life of just asking a question to my deeper inmost self that is peaceful and loving and not this, rampant mind, and waiting to see what comes up.
Mm-hmm.
And so I started offering that as a service. I also did Bach flower remedies. And now the way that all weaves into my sessions, I'm still doing styling with people. And also we're having all of these conversations about life and where do you feel stuck? And I'm doing Reiki facilitation, the whole time I'm touching them and I'm in their bubble and we're shampooing. And it's become this really cool, sacred way of unblocking the soul on so many more deeper levels than just external styling. And in my own business life, how that all comes together is one, understanding who I am through all of these systems and the gifts that I have to offer. But two, utilizing inner voice facilitation as a two-way dialogue with your soul, with your higher self, with your guides
Mm-hmm.
to make every single decision on my path moving forward, whether it's my personal life or my business life. So that was a long answer, but there's a lot involved in how I've gotten here, and all of those elements feel really important.
It is. It is. I love hearing people's just kind of journey because it's never a straight line. And we all have these like little entryways or gateway drugs, right? Like what got you on the train, and then the train just kind of took you on a journey and you ended up here, but it took so many different ways of kind of getting here. And so something you touched on was how you use inner voice now to make decisions in your life and in your business. And that is so important, I think, especially for people who are wanting to connect more with their spirituality as a tool and a gateway to have a business that it's more aligned with their dharma and their sole purpose versus just having a business and following these external metrics or scarcity mindset, etc. So like, how do you feel like you have been able to integrate this inner voice practices into your own life and your business?
Well, it's really interesting that you say that we try to follow all of these external metrics of what a business is supposed to look like, what it should look like with air
Mm-hmm,
quotes,
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
which all of our conditioning, which is what actually blocks the light of our soul, is all of this
mm-hmm.
conditioning, is just anything that we say we should be.
Exactly.
Because if we're saying we should be something, we feel like we're not already that, which means it's not inherently part of ourself, which means maybe that's not what we're supposed to be.
Mm-hmm,
If we're not
mm-hmm.
already it, then maybe that's not it.
Yes.
And when so I have a space in town called the Healing Society that you and I do a lot of work at together, and we've got to be present at a lot of events there together. And when I was creating it, technically it is a business, again in air quotes, because I provide a thing and people pay for that thing. And yet the whole idea was I knew so many talented healers in town, and none of them had a place to bring their gifts to the world. And the world needs
Mm-hmm.
their gifts so desperately, especially right now. And I was infuriated that it was so difficult for gifted, compassionate people to be able to bring their gifts and compassion into a world that needs it. And so I was like, if we just had a space that I can fill with pretty furniture and Wi-Fi, then we can all just offer our, gifts and sessions and teachings and things there. So that was the whole idea. But as I was creating this container of what this thing wanted to be, I had this blueprint, almost like an etheric blueprint in my inner vision. And whenever I had a question, I would, tap into that. I would pull it up and be like, okay, this is what I have to do at this step. What do we do next? Because I grew up, my parents were entrepreneurs. And so I grew up hearing them talk about business all the time. I grew up reading a lot of business books because they were always in the house.
Mm-hmm.
And I've learned from a lot of really reputable teachers how business is supposed to look. And so when I started asking these questions about what the Healing Society was supposed to look like, when I asked Inner Voice, I heard, yeah, so it's really cute that you've read all of this stuff about business. And also, you don't have to set all those books on fire, but you can definitely set them way, way, way off to the side, because none of that information, none of those ideas of those people's minds that they have already been conditioned by is going to be pertinent or helpful in what this thing is supposed to be. It's not supposed to be a hierarchical system. It's not supposed to have these really particular facts and figures and benchmarks and ROIs and those terms, I was told, are not helpful for what this wants to be, because this is not supposed to be a patriarchal container. It's supposed to represent how future businesses, in air quotes, how future communities of people that do their gifts together can look as this new world continues unfolding, and as the divine feminine continues weaving this more receptive, nourishing presence into our current state of being. So they said, we don't need those masculine projecting systems, because this healing society is supposed to be a receptive container. And it's a complete 180 of that frequency. So don't look at those plans. When you have a step that needs to be taken and you don't know the answer, ask us. We will open the blueprint and we will tell you how to move forward each step of the way. You can't look at a previous map because the map hasn't existed yet. You're creating this map as you're living it. So that feels a little bit like falling through space.
Yes.
But also knowing that there's like an invisible net under you, which is, exhilarating.
It's so freeing.
We don't want things to be boring. So
as a managing, we know that we are here to create and to bring about new ways of doing things, right? Yeah. So like the managing is here to show the world a new way of combining things that doesn't make sense and bringing new things into the world. And so when you are someone who is here to, your dharma is to bring new things into the world, it's really hard to look at someone else's blueprint or the blueprint of, like you said, all of these business books and all of these, because if it's supposed to be new and novel, it doesn't exist yet. So like you're basically starting from scratch, but not in like a way where you have to do it by yourself. And that's why it's so, you go from a state of, oh my gosh, I have to do this all by myself, to, oh my goodness, I don't have to do this all by myself actually, because I'm going to be guided every step of the way. And like you were saying, it is a new way of looking at what a container could look like, because I think there's this like, right now I'm picking up on this, like the energy of like moving so much into the feminine and saying like, oh, we're going to like completely forget about the masculine. But I think we are not forgetting about the masculine. We are reimagining what the divine masculine could look like and what a container could look like that actually holds the feminine and not suppresses it. And so all these structures may seem masculine, but they actually never were divinely masculine, right? They were all just so in the frequency of control and toxicity. And so now we are saying, okay, how can these containers still hold the feminine, but not kind of constrict her? And how can it be a container that is supportive and really standing in the divinity of the masculine?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's interesting because I was having a conversation with someone who I feel very aligned with spiritually recently. And she was saying, I would never call myself a feminist. And I was like, what? You wouldn't? What do you mean? She's like, well, no, I don't hate men. I don't hate the masculine. I think there's lots of value in masculine energy in terms of like projecting things into the world, making things, being assertive. And I was like, yeah, I feel totally aligned in that. I agree with that. I just would love for women to, make 100 cents on the dollar like men do instead of 70 cents on the dollar. Like, I think there's this egalitarian equality that needs to happen. And we get very confused. I think there needs to be clarity on these terms of masculine and feminine, because I don't mean women and men. I don't, when I say feminine energy is rising in the world right now, I don't mean actual women are getting more physical power in the world. That may be a symptom of the divine energy of feminine rising, but that's not the point. It's like you can't make yourself beautiful by putting more makeup on. the energy shifts underneath first, and then everything follows. So yeah, there might be more women, growing into powerful positions in the world, but it's because the underlying zeitgeist is shifting, saying, we can't inhale forever. We can't pump ourselves up and be the biggest and taut and best and like fierce and throwing punches because we're so inflated. If you inflate forever, you will die. You have to exhale. You have to open up space. And so when I talk about masculine and feminine, I'm talking about inhaling and exhaling. And I'm talking about projecting something into the world, sending out a radio signal into the world, and then also being a radio receiver that can then take messages in and be transformed by it. And then that changes what I put out, subsequently. The masculine and feminine, it's, the classic yin yang symbol, always swirling together, never stagnant, always moving, and always having a little bit of the other one embedded within itself. So I think that's really important we're not trying to completely disrupt or deconstruct the masculine. We're just trying to find a semblance of balance. And the pendulum has been so far to one side. The pendulum has been so far to one side. It has to swing probably a little too far the other way before we're like, oh, that also doesn't feel right. And then it kind of lessens and lessens in this wild swing until it can find a middle way of balance.
The thing that I'm recognizing is that we actually are deconstructing the masculine in its current form, because the masculine in its current form is not divine masculine. It is very toxic. It is not rooted in the masculine energy that is we all have inside of us, right? So it's this the system needs to break, and for a system to break there needs to be entropy, and for entropy there needs to be chaos. So we need to break the current system to be able to recreate the system in a more holistic way, because even what we have right now as what we call masculine, that is not healthy either. So it's like, this is not talking about women or men. And also, like, sometimes when I think about the feminist movement, it is so masculine in the aspect of, right, like it is becoming, I'm like, oh, this boss girl, and I'm like, I can do anything and I don't need a man. And yes, that is not healthy either, because we need both energies to be able to manifest in a healthy and in a like, the container needs to be healthy, and the energy within it needs to be as well. And I think a lot of specific women who are healers, they may be a lot too much in their feminine and not enough in their masculine, right? So like you said, the pendulum is sometimes swings so much to the other side where there's no structure, there's no container, and so they aren't connected to their divine feminine in a way that is safe, because for this divine feminine to be really kind of fully embodied, she needs to feel safe in her masculine. And how many of us have daddy issues and is like has relationship issues and have this like wound when it comes to the masculine and the father wound, etc. And so it's not bashing men, it is understanding that this is a collective reimagining of what our energies could look like, versus us being so polarized that we've been for the past thousands of years, really since the Great Fall, right? Like since the fall of Lemuria and Atlantis, there's been this complete oversaturation of this like masculine energy that has, obviously we know, created this chaos. And so we're almost like needing to unravel, okay, picking it up and being like, is this truly truth, capital T truth, like you were saying, like when you hear it and you feel it and you're like, I can sense that is truth in my body, and using that as your litmus test, not necessarily like the gender paradigm that we've created.
Yeah, I used the word deconstruct, and I think you're right that is incredibly necessary. When I said I don't want to deconstruct, I love the idea of taking apart a house brick by brick and examining it and being like, is this piece
Mm-hmm.
valuable, or was it just shoved
Mm-hmm.
in there on accident?
Mm-hmm.
I think
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to annihilate the
Yes.
masculine. I don't want to destroy it. Yes, there are things that have to die. There's parts of the plant that have to be pruned. And yet
Mm-hmm.
the plant has already seeded to allow more
Yes.
growth to happen. So
Correct.
it's, things do die and are taken apart. And yet there
Mm-hmm.
is resurrection,
Yes.
which is part of the cycle. That's part of the process. It's
Yes.
supposed to be. It's not supposed to die off forever.
Mm.
And I do love that this wave of the divine feminine is rising. And I don't want masculine to die off forever. Like I said, you can't inhale or exhale forever. There has to be a flow. And you're totally right that so much of this desire to not be oppressed by masculine systems is reflected back on itself in the same patterns as the masculine systems.
Mm-hmm.
Like, especially like you look at third wave feminism, especially like the late 80s and early
Mm-hmm.
90s, and it's power suits and shoulder pads, and which is physically trying to make the female look more
Bigger.
masculine. I'm
Yeah.
going to bulk myself up. I can be you, but better, which isn't the point. It's I can be me
Me.
in the most whole, beautiful, helpful, supportive way. And then we support each other. And I'm not, of course, just talking about men and women. I'm talking about these principles of softness versus solidness in a way. It's allowing what this rising of divine feminine energy is doing is not just opening doors for more nourishing, receptive, gentler systems, which it is, but it's also saying to men in our society, and not just men in our society, but anyone who has been told you have to buck up and man up and have some balls and frickin' deal with it and not tap into any of this stuff moving inside you. It's allowing that system of rigid overcompensation to soften. And it's saying there's a gentler way. It doesn't have to be so balls to the wall. Like, there's a gentler way to do things. And if we talk about feminine power rising, the only visuals that we've had for power in the last 11,000 years have looked like dominating, have looked like brute strength, have looked like taking down a lion with your bare hands, because that was necessary for survival at that time. What's necessary for survival moving forward is a softening and a gentleness. Because otherwise we're going to destroy ourselves from the inside out.
Burn out. Yeah.
We're just going to
Completely.
burn out. So we have to really reimagine what power can look like in a more balanced and healthy way. And of course, we've been demonstrating it in the only way that we've known how for
Yes.
eons of generations. Of course, it has looked like I need shoulder pads to be powerful. But maybe it doesn't have to look like that. And I see that in you. I see how you show up in a soft, receptive, and also assertive way. It can be a balance.
Yeah, I always see the masculine container as like a semi-permeable membrane. So like when you think about a cell, the cell has a membrane that is around it, but it's not restricting the cell. It is moving with the cell, right? It is the river banks. It's not constricting the river. It is helping flow of the river. And as someone who has such significant masculine energy inside of me, I've always been assertive, and I've always had these traits that were told to me, oh, it's too much, or you're too much, or tone it down. And so it certainly has been a process of me to like, how do I internally really work with both my masculine and my feminine, and not vilify the one or lean into the other too much. And I really do believe that like your feminine aspects of self won't be able to come forth if it doesn't feel safety. And safety is required, and safety, feminine only again feels safe when it is able to trust the masculine within, the masculine without, your familiar masculine, what does your containers look like in your life, and then bring it back to business. You cannot run a business without a masculine container, right? And so I'm kind of on this like mission of saying, yes, the feminine is rising, but don't forget that you need a masculine container. You can't just like willy-nilly go and do stuff for your business and not have some type of system, some container. It needs a structure that will hold it, and whether that structure is your own energy, that you're really cultivating your masculine energy, or you find a coach, or you find a mentor, or whatever that looks like, there needs to be that semi-permeable membrane, because you cannot, and that's another thing, right? The masculine and the feminine is what creates, right? Like the most basic creation that is human beings can only come forth from masculine and feminine energies. And so when we create our business and we want to manifest in the physical, we need to bring together the masculine aspects and the feminine aspects. And I think a lot of people, especially healers, because we are so in our feminine, right? And when I say in our feminine, I mean things like downloading things and doing healing work and being so connected and empathic. And all of these things are beautiful. But if you don't have a masculine container, then you're going to charge enough for your work. You're going to have all these worth wounds. You're going to overcompensate by, burning out or giving too much, because you don't have that structure that is necessary to be able to really get into, manifesting in the physical, whatever wants to be manifest.
It's so true. And the interesting thing is that, of course, all of these concepts, if you turn them inside out and upside down, you see it reflected in the other side of the spectrum. And what I mean by that is the divine feminine we think of as just being open space and incredibly flowy.
Mm-hmm.
And also, I have come to understand it as the ultimate container. It is the underlying container of everything. So when I was studying astrology in the last couple of years and learning about how there's this really beautiful pattern of ebb and flow as you move around the wheel, I was so confused that Capricorn, which is the sign known for being people facing and a hard worker and striving after goals and having systems and sticking to them day after day after day, is a feminine sign. I was so confused. And frustrated that I could not wrap my head around why Capricorn is a feminine sign. And so like I do with anything that frustrates me or confuses me or stresses me out, brought it to inner voice in my morning quiet time. I did my meditation. I opened up my journal and I said, why is Capricorn a feminine sign? This doesn't make any sense.
Mm-hmm.
And they said, if the divine feminine is the dark void, is the womb that holds space for everything to come into being, what is more foundational than having the platform to stand on? Mm-hmm. If the womb doesn't exist, nothing can come into form. Alan Watts, one of my favorite philosophers, talks about how when you look at a page in a book, all you focus on is the words. This is the matter. This is why this is important. This is what's being said. He says the divine feminine is the page that the words are printed on.
Yeah.
So if we think about the underlying fabric of reality, what they showed me was it's like a big open dark void. And then I started to see this like honeycomb framework kind of appear. And so there was all of these cubbies, and they're like, the void isn't actually empty. The void has this framework that then the things that are coming to being. If you think of big, open, wide outer space, there's an invisible framework, and this is a planet that's going to go in this cubby, and this is a black hole that's going to go in this cubby, and things don't crash into each other because there's this scaffolding holding them together. When you're building a skyscraper, you can't do it without scaffolding. And the scaffolding is what holds space for then the structure that's actually going to be the one that
Yes.
lasts. And then the scaffolding goes away and moves and forms and becomes scaffolding for something else. Yeah, really, really wild to think about. Because when it came to the Healing Society, it said
Yeah.
this is a feminine community, a structure, in that it is egalitarian, in that it is very nurturing, in that it holds space for spirit to come in.
Mm-hmm.
The feminine can be the outer walls of the membrane
Mm-hmm.
it's because it's the open space and it's receptive. And you
Yes.
can't collect things if you don't have a bowl to put them in. Otherwise, they just flop all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
And then the thing that comes in and fits in the bowl
Mm-hmm.
is a masculine thing because it's a structure.
Mm-hmm.
But the space that is the emptiness of the bowl before it gets put in is actually feminine.
Okay, so I just remembered I just remembered something that was mind blowing for me. So you mentioned the yin yang, right? And so I've always, similar to you, thought that the black was the masculine and the white was the feminine, and then they each had a little bit of each other in it, right? And that's not inaccurate, but what came through a year ago was that the black is the dark feminine, the white is the light feminine, and the circle around it and the little circle inside, like the
swirl thing.
That swirl in the circle around it is the masculine. The dark feminine and the light feminine is Gaia, Sophia, and Yahweh. Like the three primordials. It's but like the feminine is both dark and light, and then the masculine holds it all, but it's not. And so like when we tap into our dark feminine, the Kali, the like you were saying, the Gemini, the like, that is as much feminine as the light feminine of Sophia, and the like, what we see as quote unquote, the typical feminine traits. It is this like, and then and then creating the form, whatever is coming into physicality is the masculine, because the masculine rules physicality. And so when you think about it as like this, you have the form, spirit comes into form. The act of spirit coming into form is the combination of the divine masculine and the divine feminine, because spirit feminine rules the spiritual realm, and the masculine is the kind of the ruler, or like is here to protect and to hold and to like in the physical. And so when you come into the physical and things and it's been so beautiful just to see in my life as the guides have been working with me, cultivating my masculine side and bringing it together is like the things in the physical realm of going out and failing in the physical, creating, doing art, like doing things in the physical, and not just being like la la la, like only downloading and doing all of these channelings. Like, no, bring it into form. That is how you heal the masculine aspects that need so much healing in ourselves and in the collective.
That is a huge principle when it comes to hearing your inner voice, when it comes to developing your intuition, is the responses that you get are infinitely clearer and more actionable when you have an intention to act on them in physical reality.
Yes.
If you do not have an intention to put it into practice, you will get a bunch of ambiguous, fuzzy answers, because spirit wants to be made manifest in physical reality. That is the pattern. Edgar Cayce, one of my most influential teachers, said, spirit is the life, the mind or imagination is the builder, and the physical is the result. And that's the Holy Trinity. It goes spirit and then blueprint and then physical. Everything that exists in physical reality came through an etheric blueprint first. It had to know where the molecules were supposed to connect. Spirit wants to come into fruition. And the urgency with which you plan on manifesting what you hear from your intuition also increases the clarity of it. If I say, am I supposed to quit my job ever? It's very ambiguous. But if I say, am I supposed to quit my job tomorrow? Oh, no. Okay. Even if I'm not happy at my job, if I ask about the immediate present, all you can ask about is now.
Now,
It's so much
because now is the
clearer.
only thing that exists, right?
And if we bring it back to business decisions, which, hi, we're here to talk about business. And
We're
it's
back.
all, everything is spiritual, right?
Yes.
But when I ask about long term business goals, my inner voice is not interested. It says, that's boring. What are you doing today? What are you
Yes.
doing perhaps tomorrow morning, but mostly today? That is the guidance that I get. That is the only
Mm-hmm.
guidance I get. I want the entire blueprint at once. And they say, you can't handle the truth. Like that in the movie. But
Yes.
they're like, no, you get the next step, maybe 1.5 steps if you're
Yes.
lucky. If you get up to 5 steps, you will have a panic attack. You will say,
Yes.
I don't know how to do that. I don't see how those pieces are going to come together. So they're like, listen, it is actually more compassionate for us to tell you what to do in the next 2 hours in your immediate right now that is actionable. And I have found that when I'm looking for guidance for my business decisions, that is the only way of being. When I say, what's the 6-month plan? What's the 12-month plan? What's the 5-year, 10-year plan? They're like, who cares? You could get hit by a bus next month. Why do you care what happens 6 months from now? Cross that bridge when you get to it, which is also very opposite of everything I read in the business books
Mm-hmm.
growing up.
Mm-hmm. Everyone wants a
There,
5-year plan. Everyone, like, what's your 5-year plan? I have no idea. I've always been like that. Like even like in high school, I was like, I don't know what my 5-year plan is. I'm going to this is what I'm, this is I always see it as like, this is my North Star, not my destination. Like I'm oriented in the right way. Like that's what I check. I'm like, is my orientation still, in alignment? Okay. Now that's all I'm looking at. And then now I'm looking down. What's the next step? And it's like this visual that like the tiles, as you step on the tile, it's lit up, and that's all you need. And basically, you should just look at your feet and do what you need to do. And this coach I had always talked about, like, you have like max 5% that you need to do, and then spirit, the universe, whatever you want to call it, as 95%. So just do your 5% and let go of the rest, which is the most infuriating thing sometimes, as you know.
I sure do.
Because I want to know all the steps, which is, so human of us. And I always say, right, which, I'm saying this because I heard it, I hear you, that this wasn't something I thought of, but we're human because we're human, right? We can't expect ourselves to be not human. These traits that we have of impatience and wanting to know all the steps, and being frustrated by not trusting divine time, all of these things are human traits, and we came here to experience the full breadth of humanity. And so holding space for yourself and not being like, oh my goodness, I wish I could just be this like guru that's sitting on top of a mountain and being able to like be spiritual all the time. No, if you've had lifetimes where you were that, probably, but I always say, if you were supposed to be a guru on a mountain, you would be a guru on a mountain. You are not. You are living with kids and a spouse and family, and you need to go to the grocery store. This is the life you chose to live right now. And I think we have the, I think it's dismantling, but this idea of being spiritual is just being in meditation all day. And this is another way that spirit wants to be in form, right? Like the old ways was kind of extricating yourself from reality and going into meditation for hours. But that is not what we need right now. We need to bring it into our, trip to the grocery store. Like, how can you bring it in, like bring these practices into your daily life, not kind of create this thing where you have to like remove yourself from day-to-day life and go sit on a yoga mat.
Yeah, that's actually not incredibly helpful. Because if you can't
No.
access the spirituality in your day-to-day life, what's even the point of it? Isn't it supposed to help you navigate your human experience with more grace and
Mm-hmm.
patience? And
Exactly.
um, I, yeah, I have been learning a lot about surrender over the course of this year so far, and I was particularly wrestling with a directive that I got back in February, which was, it was, oh yeah, I know what it was. It was exactly 4 weeks before Easter. So I guess it was the middle of March. And the directive I got was for the next 4 weeks, for the remainder of the Lent season, that I didn't grow up practicing because I wasn't Catholic, but I have always thought was a really cool thing. What can we eliminate to then fill back up with spirit? I think that's a really, really cool idea.
Mm-hmm.
And what I heard was, for the remainder of this Lent season until Easter, we would suggest letting go of all of your to-do lists. We know you have 8 or 9 to-do lists. They are very full. They have categories and subcategories. They have due dates. They have deadlines. They have, baby steps to get to the bigger steps. So what would it be like for the next 4 weeks to literally not open that app and forget, and just like not get access to any of the information on it, and ask in every moment, what is the most life-giving thing I could do right now? Didn't love that.
Would not recommend.
Would recommend, and also didn't love it. Like for the first, in retrospect, like the first 2 weeks of it was just anxiety. And when I was sitting with it and wrestling with it, it was like, but what if I'm forgetting something? So I didn't know that I had ADHD growing up as a child. I was told I was spacey, I was ditzy, I was forgetful, I was called a dumb blonde all the time. And there's a huge part of me that finds safety in having lists so that I don't forget something that's actually important, because I don't want to be seen as unintelligent, like, ooh, there's still grief there. Like, what if I had known that my brain was more pattern oriented and expansive when I was young? That's a whole other conversation. But so there's a lot of not feeling safe and not having access to all of the information because I don't want to forget things that are important, because I am responsible for a lot of things, responsible in air quotes, because what they told me is, it seems like you have an underlying fear here. You don't trust that spirit is organized. You think that spirit is swirling mist that has no path or plan, and that if you don't hold on to every single detail, they're all just going to dissolve into the ether. Mm-hmm. But if you look outside the window and you look at a freaking leaf, is it disorganized, or is it incredibly intricate and precise and gorgeous in all of its inner workings that I don't even comprehend? And they also said, if you say, this is what I want to have happen, and this is the way that it needs to come into fruition, you have eliminated 99.99999% of the ways that spirit could have come in and surprised you. And you could have been surprised and delighted, and now you demand that we do it this way. And by the way, you only think you should do it that way because that's what you've seen everybody else doing, and it's not even that much fun. It's not even the coolest way to do it. So how about you just let that freaking expectation go?
Your brain probably loved that. Your ego.
So it has been, oh my gosh. Yeah, surrender is the word. Is the word of the year. And I feel like, oh, okay, I released that layer. I released the to-do list. Now in the morning, I say, what is the most life-giving thing I can do today? What should I focus on? And then a whole new layer comes up, and they're like, oh, now this is the next iteration of this curriculum. Now you get to release this whole other thing that you have not been surrendering.
It's a spiral, right? Yes. The learning.
Yeah, but this spiral is moving so much faster than the spirals I've experienced in the past. It's like every moon Quickening. Cycle, it's a new curriculum, or it's a new chapter of the curriculum book, where before, I swear, a chapter of curriculum would take me like a 3-year cycle or something. It is so rapid now. It's kind of disorienting.
But it's this quickening that's happening. And I think it's certain of us who are at like warp speed on the like Autobahn, and they're like, go. Like you just need to strap in, or otherwise you're going to
And to that point, they said, if you don't learn to uncurl your white knuckled fists and surrender, this roller coaster is moving fast and your arms are going to get ripped off because it is already moving and you are on it. So you better surrender. Otherwise it's going to hurt. Yes. So the sooner you learn to let go, the better.
And that's why they say babies don't get hurt in a car crash, because they don't, right? Like that's the whole thing, that they don't, like, because you're just
Drunk
going with
people
the
also
flow.
don't get hurt as much because their muscles are relaxed. If you're actually relaxed, you don't get whiplash.
You go through the motions as they come versus using your preconceived notion. And the hubris, isn't it just so funny as humans? The hubris that we think we have any answers. Like we think that, okay, I need to control spirit. If I don't control...
Spirit doesn't know how the universe works. I'm the only one who knows how it works.
If I don't do this, everything's going to fall apart. And the bird outside is like, what the fuck is a spreadsheet even?
Right. Seriously.
What is taxes?
My friend is like, my friend goes, my dog doesn't care what's on the news.
No.
Literally doesn't
Why
care.
Why should
I? And they're thriving. They're just living their life. They have all their needs met, you know?
Yeah, imagine.
I'm thinking of so much Bible scripture right now, Fabi. It's so funny how the pendulum for me swung the whole other way. I released all of it. And then now, the more I am enmeshed with spirit in my life, these Bible verses that I memorized as a kid at vacation Bible school are coming back to me. And I'm like, I get that now. That makes sense to me now. Like, how am I as a human supposed to understand what's happening in universal unfolding? It's like saying, I'm the shepherd, you're the sheep. The sheep don't understand the big picture. Trust. The sheep doesn't have to understand how the world works. The shepherd's got it. The shepherd's got it. And then I'm also thinking about the if he clothes the lilies of the field in their gorgeous petals, of course your needs are going to get met too.
Exactly. Consider the lilies, right? Like, but it's that, I always say it's the underlying energy that comes through, that is coming out, right? Like if you're, and I think you posted this of like, if you're a Christian or you're a follower, but you don't actually, something like, it's like, this aspect of Christ consciousness comes up a lot in the conversations where we really see this. We've seen this. I don't know if you've picked up on this, like return to Jesus or return to God movement, or like people who have basically like went through this whole spiritual awakening, and now over the last year or two, they've kind of gone back to the church in a way that is so much more like dogmatic than they even were before. And it's so interesting, this aspect of the Christ consciousness returning, and never left, but like really rising as well. And I think a lot of us who grew up in the church, go through this deep deconstruction process, but then return back 180. Like you return back to this energy of truth that was always there underlying all this shit that was put on top of it. And now we're able to like pull out again. We're able to pull out and see what is here. You can see the truth underneath it, and you've removed the dogma, you've removed the control, and you're able to be like, oh, that's because there's so much truth, and that's how systems are created. That's how empires are, it's there's a kernel of truth in it. But it, it's so like convoluted after like, thousands of years, but there is still that truth that you can still find, like that layer or that like thread that you can pull.
Yeah, I always describe it as when I'm wrestling with a concept and then I ask inner voice and then I feel like I'm getting turned inside out and upside down. And I'm looking at the concept, but from a completely reverse perspective, like in the movie Interstellar, which, spoiler alert, it's been out for a while. He looks back at his life from inside of the black hole and he's like, oh, I see how it all made sense now. And that's how I feel about the scripture that I grew up with, the Christian principles I grew up with, is inside out and upside down. Oh, I totally see how that makes sense now. If we 100%. Remove the teachings on it, the improper translations, the taking things out of context so that leaders could control people by telling them that it's actually about being afraid instead of being safe in spirit, because when people are afraid, you can control them and manipulate them. And people who are empowered cannot be controlled, even though the Bible says, fear not, more than 230 times. It's the most repeated thing ever. The people who teach us the Bible are telling us we're supposed to be afraid all the time. That's a whole soapbox I can get on. But this idea of returning back to spirit in an authentic way, in an energetically aligned way, and seeing the truth in it. There's a church that we were members of back in Tampa called Watermark. It is one of the most incredible places ever. And Tommy Phillips is the pastor there, and he is a grounded, true teacher. He teaches cultural context. He teaches the underlying energy of what was being communicated, but in a very he teaches in a very analytical, structured way, like college lecture type perspective, kind of like our friend Raven at the Healing Society, And he had his first book come out last fall, and it's about the deconstruction movement. And is this a problem because the church feels like this is like the end of, the contemporary Christian church? And he says, or is it a prophetic call to return to what it's supposed to be, like the prophets through the ages? He's called Invisible Jesus. He says, people, millennials in particular, aren't walking away from millennials aren't walking away from Jesus. They think his call to love people is right on, He said, that's the most important rule. They're like, great, aligned with that. They're walking away from the church because they don't see him there. And that is the thing.
He's not there anymore. And I stopped calling him I started calling him Yeshua. I don't like Jesus. To me is the church. You can have that. Yeshua is the energy underneath it, right? You start, and that's what you're saying. Like, I think this aspect of like uncovering the layers that has always been there. You're not finding something that's new. You're just removing you're removing the layers from what has always been there, right?
Bringing it back around.
Exactly. We're like full circling this shit. But it was so beautiful to me because, again, I think same thing. The reason why I chose to grow up in the church, and I chose a family where my dad was a pastor, and I grew up in a church that was so conservative, and I still believe it was a cult. But the thing that it taught me was to look at the Bible in a different way and understand the Bible in a more allegorical way versus like Bible, like truth, or like what is it really? What is the what could the the Genesis story be if it wasn't like actually about like the first humans? Like what is the allegories there? How can we pull through these because that's it's not a storybook, and it's also like inaccurate anyway. So anyway, but I was able to see the Bible, and I know the Bible, right? Like, which is the thing about growing up in the church. You're like, you can't tell me anything about up and down, versus all of these stories. They're not new to me. And obviously there was a lot of trauma that came with that. But now I'm able to really have conversations with people and really be like, you can't really like pull a wool over my eyes about this, because like I lived and breathed this for 20 years, like my formative years. This is all I knew. And so I went through this again reconstruction process. And when I got reacquainted with Yeshua and Mary Magdalene and Mother Mary, it was like coming home. It was like coming back home after a long time away to like best friends. It was such a different experience. And now I'm like, the things I say sometimes, I'm like, 10 years, 20 years ago, Fabi it sounds the same sometimes, right? The things we talk about sounds very similar, but the energy behind it is rooted in something completely different. So it's like this universal truth underlying this aspect of this Christ consciousness is so different than the Christian church and the Jesus that they've created, and like this moniker of a person and one-dimensional like being. Have you ever read the book called Remember Union?
No, but I've heard about it. Okay, writing it down.
Very good. It speaks of Mary Magdalene's kind of life in, there's so many of them. There's so many, Mary Magdalene stories. But she's been coming up often, I think, for a lot of us. And, this aspect of the feminine rising, like reclaiming and like working with her, like work with the Marys, love the Marys. But, 20-year-old Fabi would turn it over in her grave if she knew how much I work with, archangels, and how much I work with the Marys and Yeshua and Yahweh, like these quintessential characters or aspects or archetypes that were so rooted in my Christian upbringing that I was like, no more. And now it's like we're besties, we're back.
We're back, baby. It's also interesting. I think often about when I talk about inner voice, the Bible says in Psalms, in the secret quiet place, that's where you are. That's where I can hear you. And I mean, I have a regular morning routine of having a quiet time, of meditating, and then dialoguing, journaling back and forth with inner voice, which is what the church was always trying to get me to do as a kid and a teenager. And I was like, boring, because I hadn't felt the connection yet. But when it talks about listening to the still small voice within, when it talks about when you pray for something, have the confidence that it's going to come into fruition, when it talks about Jesus saying, the kingdom of heaven is within you, which also translates to in your midst.
Mm-hmm.
It's in the zone. It's in the ether moving between your atoms. The kingdom of heaven is in the quantum sauce that is shifting through you, and you access it through going within. Like, it all is so much more meaningful now. And it was true the whole time, but I wasn't taught it in a way that made it personal.
Yes.
Yeah.
There was this removal. There was this, and that's what I always craved, right? I craved this personal relationship because I could feel, my soul could feel like this tether that I knew existed, and it still exists, but I couldn't find it because the teachings were so removed from that. They were so like, don't trust your body. It's like your body is where it is.
Yes.
Right. And so It's so interesting because it's obviously so divinely created, because the church has so much power, and with great power comes great responsibility. But also it's like, it's the neural pathways are there, which is amazing, right? Because they're there. It's just, we need to deconstruct and reconstruct to get to the other side of it. Like you said, inside out and around.
That's it.
But it's there because we grew up in it. We were baptized in it, quote unquote, right? Like we know,
and literally,
right? But we know the stories. We are familiar with the energy, even though it was bastardized and is still being bastardized, but we are familiar with that energy imprint or signature. And once you're able to find inner voice, once you're able to find your intuition, and once you're able to know what truth feels like, you can go back to it and be like, oh, so you're not learning from scratch. You know what I mean?
Right.
And it's actually so genius, because regardless of how everything is in divine timing, right? Because the powers that be, or what do you want to call it, the darkness, the blah, blah, all of these, the powers that be that has created the system where the church was used for control, has created a blueprint that can be used to shift. It's already there, right? Like it's already, and a lot of people, are still going to continue in that cycle of being in this, in the cycle of fear and all of that. But the ones of us who are breaking away from it, we already have the foundation of these teachings, of this like energy signature. And now we are just kind of going, okay, I'm going to go do the inner work, and then I'm going to we don't have to like start over.
Yes.
It's
Yes.
like when you start to think about it, it's like genius, because we're using the system that was created to oppress us as a starting off point for our liberation.
Well, when I think about deconstruction, I think about, like I said earlier, taking apart a house, looking at every single brick and being like, is this brick helpful? Or was this brick just filler? Or how did it get here? When you take apart a house, you still have all of the materials there.
Yes.
You can reconstruct it in a more balanced, healthy, supportive, functional way. You still have all of the bricks.
And
Mhm.
that brick was always helpful because it all happened for you. That brick that was laid there, even though it felt like it was not for you, it happened to you, that actually helped you get here, which was all in design, by design, right? Like every single thing that has happened to you and will happen to you, it's not happening to you, it's happening for you. And so even the brick that you are discarding, which is so funny, because as we're doing the spiral thing, we realize the bricks that we've discarded before, we come back to it and we're like, oh, actually, this brick I thought wasn't helpful. Now I see the real lesson. Now I understand the whole, like, I understand both sides of it. I understand that the dark is necessary for the light to shine, and the light is necessary for the dark to shine. So there's no such thing as a bad brick.
Yep. There's a ancient proverb that says, first it looks like a river, and then it looks like a mountain, and then it looks like a river again. Like it goes
Yes.
through this iteration. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So my storyline brain that loves an outline wants to ask you now, how does all of this, there are themes of what we've been talking about, masculine and feminine, and ebb and flow, and cycles of deconstructing and then reconstructing, which is the whole, I mean, that's the exchange of giving and receiving. What does all of this say about how you and I do business?
I think for me, it says that it is completely different than I thought it was going to be. And that it is, every time I think I figured it out, it's like, JK, you didn't figure it out yet, or ever will, right? It is that deconstructing and reconstructing this house every single day. Because the minute you get attached to the house, it changes. Literally, every day. The minute you think you have it figured out, it's like, no, actually, you don't. And getting comfortable with being uncomfortable, getting comfortable with, it's not a lesson that will be learned and then we move on. It's a lesson that we are continuously learning and implementing lessons on a new level and on a deeper level. And so seeing everything in physicality as what it is, which is just a projection of your subconscious and the lessons that you're meant to learn, and the mirror of what is still there for you to work through and experience, right? And so there is no end point. There's no finished line unless you die, which is when you're done. But there is always just learning. But this is also just a 6-3 in me, because I'm always learning, right? So, but for me, it's like, okay, there's truth, and that's the most important thing for me, was to realize what, and be comfortable and be so connected to what truth feels like for me, not for you, but my truth. What does my truth feel like? And then using that as the litmus test for everything, right? And sometimes it feels like truth, and then I realize 6 months down the road, oh, that wasn't actually it, and I adjust it, right? It's just like this iterative process of like realizing that, like, this isn't something that is I'm a victim to. Like, I'm not on earth because I'm in the death sentence, or I was like sent here because I did something wrong at some point, or karma, of all of these things. This is like a co-created, like, I can be as active in this process, and some days I don't want to be active. Some days I just want to not do the things they tell me to do, and then I reap the consequences down the road, but I'm aware of it, right? So like, for me, it's like, this conscious aspect of when you say you're conscious, you're part of a conscious community or you're awake, we fall asleep so quickly. Like this aspect of waking up and then falling asleep. Being conscious is something you can cultivate all the time, or you can go back to sleep super quickly. And I think giving yourself grace of those, like, realizing that and that's why meditation is such a profound practice, because that's the point of meditation. It's not to silence your brain, but it's to be able to more and more to catch yourself where you're following the thread of the little whatever down the river, and sitting on the riverbank and just seeing your thoughts go by. Sometimes you jump in the river and you go with your thoughts, and that's okay. But your awareness of, I'm in the river, I'm going to step to the side. So it's like bringing spirit into form, literally, all the time. How about you? How does this work for you?
Yes. Ebb and flow, give and take. Man. When you said it's just, you realize that you're just constantly uncomfortable because you're constantly growing. And if your comfort zone is constantly growing, you're always going to be just on the outside of your previous comfort zone, which is going to be uncomfortable. And that means you're doing it right. Because if you're not uncomfortable, then you're not growing. So for anyone who is listening, who feels incredibly uncomfortable as they're branching out in different phases of their own process, if it feels really scary and vulnerable and uncomfortable, great. You're doing an awesome job. One of my favorite books that was really life-changing for me is Alan Watts. I'm bringing him up again, but his book called The Wisdom of Insecurity opened my eyes to when I feel like I'm falling through space and I have no ground under me. That's actually my most lucid moment. I thought that was when I was having an existential crisis and I would slip into like a depression of what is reality. And that was only because my mind was saying I shouldn't feel that way. But when I was having an existential crisis and I was like, everything feels meaningless, what's the point of this? Which is also in the Bible, which made me feel less alone. Alan Watts said in The Wisdom of Insecurity, yeah, everything is changing every single micro millisecond. If it feels stagnant, that means it's dying. So the sooner you can get comfortable with feeling insecure, the more you'll be able to flow and be present for what's actually happening and stop resisting it and fighting it, because it's the resisting and fighting the change that's actually causing your suffering. And I think that is incredibly, incredibly poignant when it comes to business, because every single day the needs are different. Your customers need different things. Your employees need different things. The expenses change. Everything is always changing. And it's like, if we have this house, we're taking the bricks apart. We're rebuilding them in a new way. We're taking them apart. We're rebuilding them in a new way because the weather might change. It might be windy and it needs a different structure now. So being able to be fluid, or be like water, they say, okay, we're going to freeze and be like ice when we need to stand strong against the wind. Okay. And now it's really, really, really hot out. So we're going to melt and become fluid, but we're not disappearing because now we're just water. And then when it gets really, really, really hot, we might turn into gas and spread ourselves more thin because things are heating up. And then also we're going to rain and it's all going to settle back together again. Like, to be able to exist in constant change is to be able to be flexible and adaptable and be able to pivot. And the way that Nassim Haramein, who's a physicist who talks a lot about black holes and consciousness and electrons that bounce from our dimension to the quantum and back again, and how that's how information is relayed, which could get very esoteric very quickly. But he says all of the electrons in the atoms are disappearing and reappearing all the time. It's not this stagnant diagram that I was taught in school, which is a circle in the middle with like things orbiting it, like our solar system. It is similar to that because as above, so below, except that all of the things in these orbits, all of these electrons are constantly disappearing and reappearing. So it's more like a cloud of mist than like a steady track of orbit. And he says, where are the electrons going before they're popping back? They're going somewhere and then they're coming back, and reality is slightly shifted every time this happens. What if they disappear, they drop off all of the energy that they've collected, all of the information, all of the messages that need to be delivered into this Akashic pool, and then they come back with a new directive because, oh, the pool has changed now, it's shifted, and now we can go different directions. He says the definition of consciousness is to observe something that's happening, be aware that you observed it, and then can make a change, and then you make the change, and then you observe the change. And then you're like, oh, now I can do something about the change. And it's this radio signal out, observe what happens, receive the next radio signal, integrate it into your own body, embody it, and release the new system. And I think that's what it is with business. It's always, what messages am I getting from my customers? What messages am I getting from the world and the way the world is moving? I have to be observant of how my environment is changing so that then I can feel into what would be the next most helpful iteration of myself in order to impact it in the most helpful way. And then I observe that and then get the new information. And it's the cycle of how we interact with our environment.
But understanding that our environment is changing because of how we are internally, right? So like with the double split experiment is like you are influencing your environment, and where you are in your process is going to adjust what you're seeing, because we are all wearing, different glasses. And so you may see something completely different from the same environment than I am, because I'm influencing that environment because of my subconscious, and my neurons are having a conversation without me even being aware of it. So my subconscious is creating this environment, and understanding that like your subconscious work is probably one of the most important things you can do for your business, because that is what is creating the reality that you're in. And it isn't this like separate thing from you. You are the physical manifestation of like everything that you are is going to be shown in this mirror that is your reality. So we have our own realities. Every single person has our own like little VR headsets on, and our VR headsets show different things. Even though the illusion is that we are in the same reality, but we really aren't ever, because it is all being manifested through our subconscious. So the best thing, and I always tell people, the best thing you can do for your business is do your inner work, because it is all going to come through, whether you're trying to call in new clients. If you have not grown to the capacity that those clients you'll be able to hold them, then they're not going to come. They're not going to come because you don't have the capacity to hold them where they need to. So if you start to see stagnation in your clients, go internal. It isn't go market more, or go do all of these external things, right? Like reach out to people in their DMs and like do another reel. No, it's turn around and be like, what is happening what is the lesson I need to learn right now? Where can I soften? What is the season we're in, right? Like that's the other thing. We are seasonal beings, and the trees don't bloom 12 months a year, but we have this notion that we are supposed to be go, 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 go every single day and every single month of the year. And you burn out because we can't continue to, like you said, we can't inhale for the rest of our lives. And so this aspect of bringing in these sacred rituals, sacred seasonal like shifts, and looking at where we are in the wheel of the year, where we are in the seasonal shifts, where we are in the feminine, like are we, like what is happening, like you said, in the environment, and seeing it more than just like your ideal client avatar, or your like these aspects of what we've been told a business like structure needs to be. Your business structure is so much more than just like these external metrics that we've been told is important. And it has to do with like, where are you in your menstrual cycle? Where are you in, like, all of these things are going to impact where you're meant to serve, like your energy is meant to serve. And then similarly, when you were talking about your waiting for your environment, or having your environment really dictate your awareness of it, is the whole aspect of human design. It's all about, regardless of your type, you are expected, the how you're meant to work with your energy is going to be either in response to your environment, it's either going to be waiting for an invitation from your environment, it's going, informing your environment. It is always this relationship that you have, this continuous dialogue with the systems that are internal, external, in the collective consciousness. And so it's so beautiful just to realize that we're not taking off our business hats and putting on our spiritual hats, and taking off our spiritual hats and putting on our business hats. Because if you understand how the universe works, business isn't in this separate black hole, and it hasn't different rules. It has the exact same rules. And I think that's the aha moment that I think we are able to see is, we know, and I know a lot of women and a lot of healers, not just women, but we have healers that are so understand this kind of reality so well, but there's this block when it comes to implementing these teachings, these understandings, these knowings into this structure that is called 3D business.
Yeah, and I appreciate you pointing out our reality that we think we're observing objectively, and our impact on our reality is through the filter of our subconscious. And your VR version game that you're playing is going to look different than mine, which is also intentional because we have different gifts that we're supposed to bring to the world. We have different impacts that we're supposed to make on the world. And if it was all the same, then there would be a lot of stuff that gets not looked at and gets not healed. And if we want to make the world better, and ultimately, I think the goal of every business should, and I mean it when I say should, be to make the world better than we found it. If we have a business which is facilitating energy exchanges through society, it's facilitating this current comes in and this current comes out, and this person gets what they need and this person gets what they need over here. And how do we get what these people need to them, which is marketing? The way that we make the biggest impact on the world is exactly what you said. If we want to change the world, we have to change ourselves first. If we want to heal the world, we have to heal ourselves first. And doing that inner work, doing that sitting in those places that feel kind of murky and cloudy within us. It's not clear in there. It is cloudy. And intuition is about sitting in the fogginess until things bubble to the surface and you get a glimpse of clarity. And you're like, okay, I see the sidewalk with the next square lighting up. And that's what you get, is just the first little bit, because you're willing to sit in that inner realm that feels really vulnerable and you don't know what you're going to find there. But when we talk about how spirit wants to come into physical reality, spirit wants to be manifested, the universe wants to keep unfolding and keep blooming like a flower. And we are, again, the hands and feet of Christ. I'm just tying all of the things together right now. If we are the ones that are supposed to usher spirit into physical reality, we aren't able to hear and see what spirit wants to make manifest if we're not sitting in the space to do it. The only way that we can show up in our business and be what our business needs and be what our client needs and be what our community and the world needs is if we can first sit and belong to ourselves.
Yes.
And it comes also back to what I learned about inner beauty. You can't shift enough on the outside. You can't implement enough funnels to attract clients. You can't do enough Instagram advertising to make it work. Beauty starts from in here and then becomes radiant on the outside. Your successful business, a successful exchange between you and the world where everyone prospers, starts in here and then radiates out. It's the same. They say it's not personal, it's business. The Godfather, You've Got Mail is one of my favorite movies. I say, it's not personal, it's business. It's all personal. Everything is spiritual. Everything comes down to how your spirit shows up in the world, how your light is expressed in the world. And if you have a business, then that is one of the most major channels for how your light shows up in the world.
100%. Business, parenthood, partnership, all major initiations. Your business is your initiation. When you feel the call to start a business, that is you saying, strapping in to getting on this roller coaster and saying, I'm ready. I'm ready to learn the lessons that need to be learned. I'm ready to start to go through this curriculum that is a fast track, right? And there's so many people are like, and I was one of them. I was like, I hate my job. I want to quit my job. And they're like, you're not ready. And I'm like, I'm ready. And then they were like, you're not ready. And because it's such an initiation, it brings up all of your insecurities. It brings up all of your wounds. It brings up all of these things that you weren't ready to face, but you said yes to. You wanted to do that. So not for the sake of like it's not for the sake of necessarily like success being having XYZ, because I've had a lot of businesses that the point of it was not to make six figures. The point of it was to learn the lessons that I needed to learn about myself and move through it. And so again, these external metrics of like, what does success look like in a business? It's not 10K months or whatever you've been told, right? So it's this aspect of like, is it a business or is it your Dharma? Because those two things are very different. And if you're really strapped into, okay, I want to live my Dharma and I want to, be the most aligned and live my purpose in this incarnation, it's a roller coaster. It's not smooth sailing. It's not easy. You are stepping into an initiation. You're stepping into initiation. And like, we don't have mystery schools, but our businesses are, just like motherhood, just like parenthood, just like partnership. It can, if you give it the opportunity, if you take the opportunity it is providing to you to be able to learn the lessons, you can fast track your ascension, basically, which is so much better than making 10K months. Like,
So
who cares
funny.
about 10K months?
No, it's so funny. When I was first, learning about all of these different spiritual practices and traditions and systems, I was like, I went through that phase of, I'm going to get all the certifications. I'm going to learn all the things. I'm going to sit in all the workshops and be the most knowledgeable spiritual person in my mind and not have to apply it internally. Every time I wanted to sign up for another certification, inner voice was like, you don't need it. You don't need it. And even when I was opening the Healing Society, when I was working on the website and the business plan and all of the things, I remember saying to Inner Voice, I'm so impatient because Manny Jen, ADHD person, perpetual impatience, perpetual restlessness to get to what's next. I was so impatient to get the Healing Society launch behind me so that I could do more certifications and learn the stuff to continue my spiritual development. And they went, and now, pretty much 3 years in from when I had the original vision from it, I have no desire to do any more certifications. I'm like, what can this person's brain tell me? I'm glad that worked great for them. And also I know how to listen to inner voice. I know there's nothing anyone else can tell me that will benefit me when I already have a constant dialogue with spirit. And I learned that because I had to freaking trust along the way, you just have to. Yeah.
They were like, you've done this lifetimes, multiple. You want that, like, no offense, like old white man to give you a certification for something that you've literally done for multiple lifetimes. And we all go through that, right? The imposter syndrome, the adding, these different things on your website, or to just be like, oh, I did this and I'm doing this. And when I see people lead with that, I almost like, interesting.
Well, when I learned, bringing it back to human design, when I learned that open G centers are regularly looking for titles and roles and certifications because they don't have a clear sense of who they are and what their identity is, it was like arrow to the heart, because I had like a list of all of these programs that I wanted to do. And it was like, you're doing that because you're trying to understand who you are. But who you are is meant to be flexible, and who you are is meant to be a chameleon. And you are supposed to mirror the people that you sit opposite from, because that makes you relatable. And that also makes you empathic. That makes you able to put yourself in someone else's shoes. You're not supposed to have an incredibly clear perception of what you love and who you are and your exact next steps, like someone with a defined G center. You don't need all of those labels. That's for other people.
The reason, so this is interesting because I have a defined G center, and I realized because I have an undefined heart, the reason why I wanted to do all of those was because of my worth wound.
Yes.
Right?
Like, it wasn't to know who you were. Mine was to know, who am I? How do I describe myself? Yeah.
Correct. Mine was because of the conditioning of feeling like it's going to make me more worthy. It's going to prove my worth, right? And so we need to have a whole other conversation just about human design.
We really could. That would be awesome. That would be really, really helpful.
We can talk about human design all day. So before we kind of close this up, we're at like 1 hour and 30 minutes. What do you have going on right now? I know you have some retreats that you're planning. Talk a little bit about that. Yeah.
My goodness. Yeah. So many things. The Healing Society is about to do a big fair. We're launching our first like artisan craft market. We're going to have service providers doing readings, human design, and we'll have tattoos, and we have food trucks. It's going to be really, really fun. We want to start doing that more often. So people can keep an eye out for that. We're going to do it probably a couple times a year. I am leading a retreat in Egypt in January of 2026. And we are half full already. Registration has only been open like 2.5 weeks, and we're half full. So that might be full by the time this comes out. I don't know. But even still, there are many more retreats coming. I also want to do a chartered sailboat trip through the Greek Isles. It's a 57-foot sailboat. Talking about the primordial sea and the divine feminine and sinking into the void and navigating that dark, chaotic, subconscious archetypal space, all while sailing on the Mediterranean Sea, doing all of that work. I can't wait. So that's probably going to be fall of next year. I can't even, it already feels so powerful. Like I feel my chest buzzing when I think about it. That's how good it is. I have a sci-fi fantasy novel that I wrote that I'm obsessed with. It's my favorite. I've done quite a few things in my life because I'm a Manny-Gen. And also this is my favorite thing I've ever done, which is crazy. It's my favorite thing I've ever done. It talks about the light of the soul. It talks about listening to inner voice. It talks about your guides. It talks about where we come from and remembering who we truly are, but through the guise of romantasy, which is one of my obsessions, and it is so fun. I cannot wait to put that out in the world. So that's coming soon. And then if people are in Nashville and they're craving spiritual community, if they have healing modalities, if they need a place to bring their gifts to the world and they don't have it, of course, we would love to have you at the Healing Society because it is the most incredible group of people. That's how I met Fabi, and it is seriously the best people that I've met in town, and I can't imagine my life without them. So, do I have anything else going on, Fabi? I don't know. I can't remember. I think that's the majority of the things.
That's it for now.
Yeah, that's it for now. So, who knows what'll happen in 2 months? But
I know. I'll put all of the things at the bottom. You can find Taylor everywhere to link. And so, thank you so much for coming. I will definitely have you back. This was so
my absolute pleasure. This was a delight.
Oh my gosh. All right. Bye.
Okay, I'll see you soon.